Bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue sur Raconte-moi un ovni. Je suis très heureux de vous proposer aujourd'hui un tout nouveau format pour la chaîne. En effet, j'ai l'immense honneur de vous présenter une interview exclusive de Roger Stankovic, président du MUFON Australie. L'interview sera conduite en anglais et sous-titrée en français. Pour m'accompagner dans cette aventure, je ne serai pas seul. Georges, qui fait également partie du comité admin, sera à mes côtés. Cette interview portera sur la célèbre vague d'observation d'OVNI en Belgique, survenue entre 1989 et 1990. Pour vous mettre dans le contexte, la vague belge a commencé en novembre 1989, avec des centaines de témoignages signalant la présence d'engins volants triangulaires au-dessus du territoire belge. Ces objets mystérieux étaient souvent décrits comme étant silencieux, dotés de lumière brillante et capables de mouvements extrêmement rapides et précis, défiant les lois de l'aérodynamique conventionnelle. Ces phénomènes ont attiré l'attention non seulement des passionnés d'ufologie, mais aussi des autorités. La force aérienne belge a même mené des investigations et en mars 1990, deux F-16 ont été dépêchés pour intercepter un de ces objets. Malgré leurs efforts, ils n'ont pas pu obtenir d'explications claires, bien que leur radar ait enregistré des performances extraordinaires de la part de l'objet en question. En parallèle, de nombreux objets, des photos et des vidéos ont émergé. Mais une image en particulier a marqué les esprits, la photo dite du Petit Rechain. Cette photographie montrant un ovni triangulaire avec trois lumières est devenue une icône de la vague belge. Cependant, cette photo a également été sujette à controverse. En effet, en 2011, Patrick Maréchal, son auteur, a affirmé qu'il s'agissait d'un canular, une maquette réalisée avec un ami. Mais l'histoire ne s'arrête pas là, car en 2022, Roger Stankovic a contacté Patrick Maréchal, qui lui aurait fait de nouvelles confidences. Alors, qu'en est-il vraiment? Nous allons explorer ces questions en détail avec notre invité d'honneur, Roger Stankovic, pour tenter de démêler le vrai du faux. Georges, je te laisse la parole.
Merci Pierre. Hi Roger. For starting this interview, may I asking you to just introducing yourself and explaining us your position among the Australian MUFON?
Yes, so obviously, as you know, my name is Roger Stankovic. I was born in Australia, in Sydney, Sydney, Australia, and basically I am the National Director for MUFON in Australia and New Zealand. My qualifications are that I did a Bachelor of Science degree at the University of Sydney, and following that, I did a doctorate in neuroscience at the University of Sydney some time after my bachelor's degree. I worked as a laboratory technician for 20 odd years, and then I started teaching anatomy, physiology, statistics, molecular biology, and also I have done some research work in the medical field. My speciality was motor neuron disease.
Great, impressive.
Yep.
And your task among the MUFON is to utilize the information for the MUFON from all the Australian territory, or?
Yes. So basically, as national director, I coordinate what are called field investigators. So it's a civilian organization. So a civilian organization where we recruit people who want to be involved as field investigators in MUFON. And what we do, there is a database in the United States where it doesn't matter which country you're from, if you lodge a report online with MUFON, the information goes into the database and then it gets allocated to the various countries where it came from. And so I receive the reports in my email and I distribute out the reports to the field investigators, and I also investigate the cases. And basically what we do is if somebody sees a UFO, or what they think might be a UFO, they might have photographic evidence or they might have video evidence. Sometimes, most often they don't, but sometimes they do. They can attach it to the report, and then we get the report, we read the report, we call the person, the witness, and then we go through a process of interviewing them to determine how credible they are. And we also go through various processes in terms of determining whether what they saw was an unidentified aerial object or whether we can explain it away as something prosaic. So basically, we go through a process where we use software. We analyze the video evidence, if there is any. We analyze photographs, and we go to the location on occasions if there's physical evidence. And we go through the process of trying to actually be the devil's advocate. In other words, what we're trying to do is to try and determine what this thing that they had seen is. And basically, what we try to do is to either determine whether it is a prosaic object, say, for example, Venus, or it could be a meteorite, or it could be an aeroplane in the night where somebody's mistaken it for a UFO. So we're trying to narrow down the field and then determine whether we can actually ascribe a reason for the actual what the witness had seen. But if we can't do that, if we've gone through the entire process where we've gone through all the procedures of trying to eliminate what it could be, then we call it what's called an unknown. And an unknown means that it's virtually a UFO. So we do that, and we have a set of field investigators. We have a number of field investigators that are located in the different provinces and states in Australia. And basically we allocate the cases. Sometimes we go out into the person's house and interview them. Most often it's on the phone because Australia's a big continent and it's very hard to get around, and there's only a limited number of resources that we have. But if there is physical evidence in terms of a landing, or if there's a metallic fragment, or if there's residue or anything else, we will actually go to the site and then collect the evidence and then analyze it. And that has happened a couple of times.
That's great. For the French public, I just can say the MUFON is an international organization of ufologists, very serious and very reputed, and based first place, I think so, in the United States, but present in France and in Australia, everywhere in the world. It's global. That's
Yes.
interesting. And that shows the importance of your place in the MUFON in Australia, which is a very large country, very rich in UFOs.
Yes.
Let's start with the topic. Can you give us a quick point of view of the Belgian wave, as you know it?
Yeah, I think anyone past a certain age will remember the Belgian wave. I do. It happened in '89 to 1990. So it was about 6 months in Belgium where people were seeing very large craft, and mainly triangles, so black triangles with lights at the vertices and one in the middle. And they were silent, huge triangles that were just floating around near Eupen, basically in Belgium. And so basically, the interesting thing about this is that the Air Force got involved, and the first two witnesses were two policemen that actually saw one of these triangles over a field. So they reported it, and then later on there were multiple witnesses. So multiple witnesses seeing the same thing, seeing triangles, seeing other different shaped objects as well, but mainly black triangles that were silent. And it culminated to basically a period where in time between 1989 and 90, where there was a bit of a frenzy of activity, of people seeing these craft and multiple witnesses, and basically reporting them to the Air Force. And the Air Force, as I said before, got involved, and they actually scrambled two F-16 jets to try and intercept one of these objects. And they caught it on radar, but they couldn't get a visual sighting on the object. And that was actually worldwide news at the time. And basically, America got involved because Belgium thought it might have been, the stealth bomber that was going through Europe. But America assured Belgium that it wasn't. But the interesting thing about this wave of UFOs in Belgium is that it wasn't just occurring in Belgium. It was happening in the UK as well as in Australia, as well as in other areas of the world. So we had sightings of triangles in Australia in the 90s as well, in secret like military locations. We've recorded, these sightings before. So it builds credibility in the sense that it's not just happening in Belgium, but that's the main center of the world where things were being reported by very credible witnesses, police, military, um, uh, government officials, and it got to a very high level where action was taken, and so there was a huge number of reports, I think in the thousands. People were seeing these objects, but not only were they seeing them, they were actually photographing them and actually videoing them as well. The number of videos and photographs is small, but we have some very credible photographs and videos.
Interesting. I think you answered the next question I had to ask you, maybe in details. Was which kind of what are the best aspect are credible in this wave for you?
So, so basically, we can ascribe a credibility to the sightings in terms of, as I said before, the police officers that were seeing them. But not only that, because of multiple witnesses, it's not usually when we get a report, it's usually just one person seeing a UFO. But this is a bit like the Phoenix Lights event in the United States, where there were groups of people together that were saying the same thing. So that builds the credibility of the report. When you've got multiple witnesses seeing the same thing, describing the same thing, the military getting involved, you know, the military getting involved to the extent that they actually had to do something. And so basically that builds the credibility of the actual flap that happened, the wave of reports. It's not as if one person saw a triangle, reported it, and that was it. It was multiple witnesses on multiple occasions through a certain period of time, with video evidence, with photographic evidence. So that's what is important about this sighting, this wave.
Sure. Let's talk now about the photo du Petit Rechain, the picture, the famous
Yeah,
the UFO, the best one, who have been taken by Patrick Maréchal, I
yeah.
the 4th of April, 1990s. And what have been your first impression when this information has been public?
Yeah, um I do remember in the early 90s when the photograph was taken, and it was considered a absolutely real photograph. And it was even, I think even in Wikipedia they were saying, and I mean they're very anti-UFO, as you know, were saying this is the most credible photograph ever taken of a UFO. And I believed that it was, until Patrick had actually said that it was a hoax in 2011, which was quite unusual and very, very unexpected, and very much a surprise. Why did he come out in 2011 and say that this was a hoax? And so for a number of years, I almost felt like I should stop researching UFOs, because my in almost a lot of my belief was riding on this one photograph. In the early days, in the 90s, we didn't have digital photography. We just had the normal, Kodachrome film. We didn't have digital photography. We didn't have the stuff that we have today. And uh, the the photograph was a very clear photograph, which would look very difficult to actually replicate as a model or anything like that. So a lot of UFO researchers thought that this was the holy grail for ufology, and so I thought it was a real photograph, and I still do. And basically, yeah, he came out with the hoax in 2011 as saying it was a hoax, but there is a reason, I believe, why he did that.
And you have been in contact with him before he claimed that it's a hoax, or after?
No, no, after. So basically, I contacted him in 2022, and I befriended him.
Mhm.
And I didn't say that I was a UFO researcher. He didn't know me. And basically, I got to know him a little bit. And then I started talking about UFOs. I know he's a very good photographer. He likes taking wildlife photographs. And I went onto his Facebook and I saw his photographs. And he likes photographing deer and wildlife. And I looked through his Facebook and there's nothing about any photographs that he's hoaxed or anything. And I thought, I thought he's interested in photography. He's not really a hoaxer. So I'm going to just ask him, you were the guy that took the photograph of the UFO in Belgium. And he said, yes. And he says, do you know about it? I says, yes, I know all about it. And then I gradually got to ask him over time, why did you call it a hoax? And it led from then on.
And it finally said something else.
Yeah. So because he didn't realize I was a UFO researcher, just somebody that contacted him and didn't know anything about UFOs, I think that he thought it was safe for him, excuse me, for him to actually say what he would not say normally to somebody. And so he said to me that basically he said that in a roundabout way, I had to translate it on Messenger, but he spoke to me in English and initially, sorry, he was writing to me initially in English, and then I changed it to French, and I wrote in French, and he wrote back in French. So there might have been a little bit of lost in translation, but I'm pretty sure from what he was telling me is that the photograph is real, and he was paid money to call it a hoax.
Okay.
And do you have any details about who paid and why?
Yeah, so basically, the first thing I did when I got this information, I sort of like thought I was shocked. I thought, oh my God, why did he lie? And this is a big discovery, And I sort of thought I might actually contact Leslie Kean. And Leslie Kean, if your audience doesn't know, basically is quite a famous UFO researcher in the United States. And she was involved in the release or the of the Navy videos, not the release, but she was there assisting Chris Mellon and making these videos public through the Pentagon. So I contacted Leslie and I told her, I said, look, Patrick has told me that these photographs were not is real. It's not really a hoax. And I said to her, look, these are my messages and you can compare them to what you got. And she was very excited and wrote back to me and she said that there is certain things that she was suspicious about when he called it a hoax, and that was basically in 2011. So she was releasing a book that she was publishing called UFOs, Generals, and Government Officials. And I forgot the title, sorry. But it's something like that. And basically what I think happened is that the timing of her release of the book and the timing of when Patrick had called it a hoax. Yes, that's the book. When Patrick had called it a hoax was too much of a coincidence. And so I contacted her and I said, I think that Patrick's told me that he was paid money to call it a hoax, and it was timed impeccably with your release of your book. And Leslie was also quite suspicious about the fact that, you know, the timing was such that, you know, her book was going to be discredited because it had a photo of the Petit Rechain, you know, triangle in it. And so I believe I sort of like did some research, and I had a look at some articles and some publications during that period of time and tried to match up what was actually going on. And so what I did, I had a look at a couple of skeptics or debunkers, and one of them was by the name of Robert Shaffer. He has a blog called Bad UFOs, and I went onto his blog, and I remember seeing his entry. He had a blog on the Petit Rechain photograph, but that was a while ago in 2011. But I remember seeing that blog entry many years ago, and I commented on it. And so what I did, I went back to that blog entry and I looked at the date, and the date was exactly the same date as what of the blog entry that Patrick had actually gone to Belgian TV and called it a hoax. So I thought to myself, how could he have known beforehand, because it was published on the same day, all this information? And so I was a bit suspicious, and so I thought it was the same day. I think it was the 26th of June. I'm not quite sure what the date is, but it was exactly the same day that Robert Schaefer had actually published his blog entry on his blog site about the Petit Rechain photograph that Patrick had gone on Belgian TV. So I did some more research and found out that he was part of the Guerrilla Skeptics. So Robert Shaffer is part of the Guerrilla Skeptics, which is an organization on Wikipedia. And they're all debunkers and skeptics, and what they do, they go onto the Wikipedia pages and change them. And there's a guy called Robert Heatherly, who has actually done a lot of work on Wikipedia entries about UFOs and how the guerrilla skeptics have keep changing things. And so basically what they want to do is to debunk everything on Wikipedia about UFOs. So I thought that basically I might do a little bit more research and find out if this is, you know, this one coincidence where a debunker had put a blog entry saying that it's a hoax on the same day that Patrick went on Belgian TV saying it's a hoax, and whether there was a connection between Wikipedia and he said that he was paid off. So I know that Wikipedia has millions of dollars to play with. So their budget is very, very quite substantial. So I was wondering whether Wikipedia, someone in Wikipedia within the Guerrilla Skeptics had paid him off to actually call it a hoax. Because why would he, after nearly 20 years, not call it a hoax? And I knew that Patrick had an axe to grind with the initial reporter, Guy Mosse. So he is now deceased, but the initial reporter that actually Patrick had dealt with in the 90s dealt with Patrick with the photograph. He said that he'd actually asked Patrick to sign a document stating that he's waiving the rights of the photograph to him, whereas Patrick said that he was supposed to have paid him. And so Patrick had an axe to grind. He was upset about the fact that Guy Mosse had not paid him for the photograph. So he actually needed money for his wedding at the time in 1990, and he didn't get that money. And so he had a grudge against this journalist and was going to take him to court for quite some time, until somebody else came up and said, well, maybe we can pay you if you call it a hoax. So I have a feeling that there is somebody in Guerrilla Skeptics who has done this. But one more thing happened, and that is I did some more research. And what happened is that I found out that in May or April of 2011, before Patrick went to Belgium, 3 months before Patrick went to Belgium TV to call it a hoax, there was Michael Shermer, who is another debunker or skeptic, had actually written an article in the Scientific American about UFOs and about, in particular, Leslie Kean's book, the one that I just mentioned. And he said that there could be some residual evidence that is real, but he's a skeptic and a debunker. Now, what happened is that Michael Schaffer, who the guy that had the blog, commented on that statement and said, come on, you can't be serious. You know, there's nothing to UFOs. So he was quite annoyed. He was quite annoyed by the fact that Michael Shermer, his buddy, who is a debunker as well, had actually said something positive about the Petit Rechain photo and UFOs in general. So I have a feeling that because of this slight rift between the debunkers over that Scientific American article, someone, whether it be Schaffer or I don't know who it was who's done it, whether it the leader of the Guerrilla Skeptics, Susan Gerbich, or whether it was one of her associates, or whether it was the whole group, got together and decided to put an end to all of this and then go to Patrick, and then offer him money to debunk it. And that's what I think happened. I cannot prove it, but the timing is impeccable.
Okay, understood. Which means it's much more something about skeptics than CIA or what.
Yeah, I don't think it's CIA. Maybe there is an element, I don't know, but I haven't picked that up in my research. But I think definitely it looks like it's the debunkers. Yeah.
Makes absolutely sense. And at the end, about this picture, after controversial, what is your feeling, your personal feeling about the picture? Is that real for you, or?
Yeah, so I did a lot of research on the photograph, and I actually spoke to Professor Messon, who was the original, like somebody in his 90s. He's still alive, and I emailed him. He emailed me back. So Professor Messon was actually involved in initially talking to Patrick when he called it a hoax in 2011. And he said, I cannot believe you've called this a hoax, and he said, but there's all this evidence we've done. The photo went to NASA. They've looked at it. They are wondering, how it could possibly be that it's been hoaxed. And I looked at the model that Patrick had made out of styrofoam. So Patrick was asked to actually replicate the model. So he said that he put a model together by actually cutting out some styrofoam and then getting some small torches that they're not light bulbs. They were little torch like bulbs that he put inside, reseated them inside the styrofoam, and then hung up the model on a tree and took a photograph. But when he was asked to replicate that model and take a photograph, he said he couldn't do it. He couldn't get the photograph to look exactly like the one that he took in 1990, in 2011, no matter what he did. And basically his excuse was that they didn't sell the little torches that they did in the 90s. But people have looked at that model. A Belgian researcher, he's another skeptic called Wim van Utrecht, had actually put a model himself together. But they used different material and tried to replicate what he saw in the photograph, and they still didn't quite get it right. So what I did, I took a photograph of, I got a photograph of what Wim had put together. And so he'd put a model together and he'd taken a photograph, and we had the original photograph, and I put them together, and I ran an AI analysis on it. And in the AI analysis, I said to AI, I said, these are two photographs. Can you compare them? With no leading questions. And AI said to me, the one that Wim had put together as a model, and the one that Patrick took is a real photograph of an object in the sky. So, and basically, we did some image analysis on the light source and various other things, and AI is tending to say AI is not perfect, but it's tending to agree with me, saying that the original Petit Rechain photograph is real. It is not a model. And the model is a model, so it can pick the difference between the two. So there's also many other things. That's just one thing. But there are many other things as to why this is not a model. Basically, Patrick said that he took 12 photographs of his model and he never produced them. And so basically, if you look at the model, if you look at the Belgian TV documentary that they did on him, there's no way that model would stay still. And it looks like it's tilting. So in his photograph, the actual craft there's one blurry edge and two well-defined edges that are not blurry. So that it proves that the craft had actually tilted a little bit during the photograph. So it wasn't actually blowing around in the wind. It was tilted as if it was mechanically done. And also the photograph he said it was tilted on its side because he said that when he saw the UFO, it was near the horizon. And basically that the photograph wasn't actually taken underneath the craft as if he had it suspended. So we're wondering how the craft was tilted when he took the photograph with it being on a piece of string. It doesn't make sense. And also the striations in the light. Yeah, you can see them. The striations in the light are difficult to replicate. There's various scientists that looked at that and saying that basically those striations in the lights could be due to some sort of magnetic effect, magnetic field effect, causing striations in those lights. So there's many other things. I'll stop there, but these are just a couple of things that suggest to me that it is definitely not a model.
Okay, I think it makes sense. And of course, I have to ask the question, the big one. We have a lot of discussion in French ufologist group about that. But do you think Maréchal is really the guy who took the picture, or could it be someone else?
I'm pretty sure he's taken the photograph. I don't see any reason. The story goes that his girlfriend at the time was walking the dog, and she came over back to the house, and she saw the UFO. So there's only really two people there at the time, and she ran into the house and told him. He came outside with his camera and took two or three photographs with a certain exposure. and he had a filter on that, and it was a Kodachrome 33 mm film. And so basically, I believe he is the person that took the photograph. I don't see how anyone could have else got involved in that. Is there any reason why you're asking that, or?
Yes, the reason is some people. I didn't work on the topic deeply enough, but some people.
Yeah.
At the end, we have no definite proof he made this picture by himself. Maybe someone else raised this picture on the public and stay in shadow. And
Do
just,
you mean the real picture, or like if somebody hoaxed it with him,
I
or
mean
is
the
it
real picture. I mean the real
the real
picture.
picture? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, someone else take.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that he's taken the picture. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense too. In ufology, we have a lot of case of disinformation since 70 years. And do you think this case could be a good example of this disinformation or something else?
Um, Disinformation, as in it is a hoax and
Manipulation of the information, I mean.
manipulation of the information.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, I I believe that like now that they've like they've paid him to call it a hoax, that's manipulation and misinformation. But initially, I think that there wasn't really any misinformation about it. I think that it was considered a genuine photograph of the genuine UFO, and basically I know that it went to as far as NASA, where Richard Haynes had actually looked at it, and Professor Messon had looked at it. He's a physicist, and a few other people had looked at the photograph, and I don't think there was any disinformation at that stage.
Oh, I mean, when someone supposedly pay Patrick Maréchal for claiming it's a hoax, it looked like maybe in some other case where U.S. Air Force claim there is nothing to see, everything is under control, or you know what I mean. This it's in that way I speak about disinformation.
Oh, okay.
Would it be
Yeah,
of that kind, or is something exceptional?
yeah, yeah. I think it's more so. I think it's more so the debunkers wanting to kill anything that they think is could be real and could turn their world upside down in terms of proving them wrong and proving their paradigm is wrong, and that's the fear that they have, and that's how this disinformation, like, I mean, they're knowingly giving someone money to call something real a hoax, which is terrible and reprehensible and criminal to a certain degree. And that is disinformation and at its worst.
We have some case in France like that where people have been harassed by the skeptics for
Yeah.
let's go guy claim say it's a hoax, come on, you're a good guy and you can tell it, but if
Yeah.
there is money involved, that as you say it's criminal, it's something.
Well, I think that basically Patrick is the type of person who, he sees dollars in it. And unlike some other people who are genuine UFO researchers, I mean, I don't care about the dollars. I just want to know the truth, and that's why I'm researching it. And basically, I don't think Patrick cares. I think, it's difficult to know when he's lying and when he's not lying. And basically, he's a nice guy, but I've been warned from researchers from France and Belgium that if you talk to him, we don't know whether he's telling the truth. A bit like Trump.
Let's say. Anyway, he's not a UFO enthusiast. He's a photographer who had the look.
Yes.
take this picture, and maybe it makes a difference. But
Yeah.
way that's raised the problem for us as ufologists or amateur to recognize when a picture or some data is real or fake. It's very problematic in this kind of topic.
Yeah. The thing is with this photograph, because it was taken such a long time ago, it's pre-digital age, and the only way you could hoax it is to actually make a model like he said he did. But the thing is that uh, it can't be manipulated. You can't get metadata from this. Unfortunately, if it was digital, we could have got the metadata. We'd know exactly which day it was taken. We'd know what time it was taken. We'd know where it was taken. And unfortunately, we can't do it with, like non-digital, film. The good thing about the 35 millimeter film is that the resolution is extremely high because of the film grain and everything. It's a bit different to digital, and it can be analyzed quite quite well. And you can take double exposures and things, but scientists have looked at the photograph and they say there's no manipulation at all. So that's the reason why, if he was going to call it a hoax, he had to say that he made a model out of it, because there's no manipulation in the photograph at all.
Like could use IA, or we enter another topic with IA.
Yeah.
Do you think this case influenced the public point of view of this topic on UFOs or the Belgian wave? Do you think it had
Do
a
I think,
good impact? I mean,
sorry, I can't hear you very well.
do you think the when Patrick Maréchal claimed it's a hoax, it make
Yeah.
a big impact in the perception of the people have from the Belgian wave,
Yes,
on the UFO topic as well?
absolutely. Yeah. It had a very big impact on UFO researchers around the world, including myself. And basically, we thought that this was the Holy Grail. And when it was called a hoax, it was like an earthquake that went through the UFO community. And uh, I that's why I reached out to him and I said, look, did you really hoax it? And he, secretly told me, well, not so secretly now, but he told me that no, it was a real photograph, and he got paid off for it to debunk it as a hoax, which makes sense, because why would he have waited that? Why didn't he debunk it in the 90s? You know, um, you can see that through the history of the actual photograph, that initially he thought he was going to be paid by the journalist, Guy Mosse, and because that didn't happen, he had a grudge against the phenomenon. He had a grudge against the journalist. For quite some time, he thought he was going to get paid, and it didn't happen. And so he was stewing over this for years and years, until somebody said, okay, well, you know, our debunking world is going to be rocked by this publication that Leslie Kean's doing. And also, we've got one of our debunkers or skeptics in the form of Michael Schumer, who's very, very famous in terms of, like the debunking world, coming out and saying that he's supporting some of the data that Leslie Kean was going to put in a book. So you can imagine, that pressure building up, and then they're saying, okay, well, let's reach out to him. They had enough time. They had 3 months since that publication in Scientific American to actually reach out to him and say, look, go on TV and call it a hoax. And he would have said, where's the money? And they probably would have supplied him with quite a bit. He said it was quite a lot of money. I mean, I don't know what quite a lot of money is to him, but he said it was quite a lot of money. So, and certainly that money could have been provided by that organization because I know for a fact that they've got millions of dollars, millions of dollars budget. So it couldn't have been, it wouldn't have probably been just one person. It would have been like a group of people with an agenda, with a purpose and a passion to do this. And as I said, we've got more work to do, but we need to go through without telling anyone too much about what we're going to do, but we need to go through some statements and to see what I can't reveal too much about what we need to do to actually prove this because I'll be giving it away. But there is something we can do to actually get more evidence, but it's alarming the actual the dates, the coincidences that are occurring here are far too obvious to actually, call it flimsy evidence.
Sure. Don't you think it raises the question that this global talk about the picture and the discussion about the picture on the Belgian wave make the real proof much more about witness, multiple witness, and a good investigation than a picture where the doubt would remain for long? Don't you think?
Sorry, say that again.
I mean, don't you think it's better proof to have multiple witness on
Yes.
with a correct investigation, maybe by police or investigator, UFO investigator, than a picture, where a picture could be discussed for long, and like we had the trend photography where we had this problem where.
I think that, yeah, what you're saying is correct, but the thing is that you need evidence. So even if it's the police have seen something and reported it, the military's reported, you've got radar traces, you still need either a really good video or a really good picture, because a picture speaks 1,000 words, they say. So it is still. We know that something happened in Belgium. We know for sure because of the fact that there were multiple witnesses, etc., etc. But it's just like the Phoenix Lights event, where multiple witnesses saw a similar object, again, a triangle. But where are the photographs and where are the videos? People become skeptical when they say, if thousands of people saw this thing, how come there's no photographs and no videos? So to substantiate the event, you would need a video or a photograph, one at least. But I know for a fact that there are videos that look very similar to the Petit Rechain photograph that Patrick Maréchal took. And basically it could be the same craft, might be some other craft, I don't know. But a lot of things were seen by multiple witnesses.
Petite question, Georges, peut-être, est-ce que Roger a vu des preuves photographiques peut-être qui ressembleraient à la photo du Petit Rechain, mais dans le cadre du MUFON Australie?
Have you seen by the Australian MUFON some picture you can take by proof like the Petit Rechain, where you can put words on it, saying this is a proof, definite proof of something?
So what you're asking is that do I have a picture of a UFO where I can prove that it's a UFO or?
Please.
No, I don't. All the photographs I have are all I've got videos and I've got photographs, but the Petit Rechain photograph is by far the best photograph ever taken. We don't have anything like that that is as clear and as good and as close a photograph as that. We have many photographs of things that have been taken, photographs that have been taken of UFOs, but they're all a little bit in the distance. They're not close up. They're a little bit blurry. Um, it, Even the videos, we have some good videos, but nothing that is dramatic like the Petit Rechain photograph. Yeah.
Don't you think it's a part of the problem? I mean, the UFOs seems to avoid the photographer, and the profile of the UFO waves changed during the time. In the 40s, we have much more in the daylight, and now it's much more in the
Yep.
night. And because everybody has, maybe it's connected. Everybody has a cell phone in a pocket and can take a picture very quickly. It remains complicated by night, and it could be relied, don't you think?
Yeah, the problem with the cell phone is that it's not made to take good photographs of UFOs. In fact, if you take a photograph of a full moon in the night with your cell phone, it's not very good. I've done it before, and if you can imagine something like the full moon on the horizon, it's huge, it's very big. But if you try and take a nice photograph with your phone, it never turns out that good. So you need to have proper equipment to get a good photograph of a UFO. Plus, also the hand is moving, and when Patrick took the photograph of the Petit Rechain photograph, he leaned against the wall to stabilize the camera. You need a tripod, so you need something where the camera's not moving, a proper lens, zoom lens, the filters. There's a lot of equipment that you need to take a really nice photograph of UFO. But because they are so, you don't know when they're going to be there. You don't know how far away they're going to be. It's impossible to predict, and it's very difficult to get a photograph of a UFO. I mean, the only other photograph of a UFO that compares to the Petit Rechain photograph is the Calvine photograph from the UK. And the Calvine photograph is not as good that is taken during the daytime. It is not as good as the Petit Rechain photograph. It's not as close up. Um, it is an unusual, like very clear photograph, but it's not as good as the other one.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. At the end, do you have an opinion? I changed the topic. Do you have an opinion about what happened the next month in New Jersey and all around the world about drones, or so-called drones authorized by FAA seems to be. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I don't believe that they were authorized by the FAA. I think that's a false statement, because if you think about it, some of those drones were flying over Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and causing the closure of the airport. So I don't think that's the case. I think that there's some lies being told by the White House secretary. Um, and I think it's unusual that Trump did not actually come out and say anything about it. Before he was as a president-elect, he was very keen to go into the details because he actually went on TV and he said the information is sitting on someone's desk. And he says he doesn't know why the public can't know. But when he became president and not president-elect, the statement from the White House came out that the FAA approved the drones, which is rubbish. It's just cannot be. So I think that the drones are, some of them are UAPs, most of them may not be. They could be just drones or airplanes that people have, misinterpreted, misidentified. But there are definitely some of those UAPs would be, sorry, some of those drones would be UAPs because if you if you think about what people have said about some of those drones in terms of they're not going back to base, they're hovering for hours. You know, people have tried to take them down with, devices that can actually take down a drone unsuccessfully. Um, there's multiple things about some of those drones when they disappear, when you try and track them, or that just don't fit into the normal drone category. So basically, I think that I think that some of those drones could have been UAPs at the time.
I think we all have been baffled by the police claims about this. Police are specialized. Some group are specialized on drones, and when they claim, "Gosh, it's not. We have drones. We have no idea about what it is, what they are."
Yeah.
Do you have some observation in Australia during this wave?
Yeah, we had an increase of sightings by 50%. So yeah, 50% during the drone wave, yeah. And we were getting nearly one sighting per 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 day, which is like people reporting. It was, yeah, just huge number. We usually per year we would get around about 120 cases. We can double that during the yeah, from end of last year to beginning of this year, it doubled. So people were reporting things. We don't know whether that was because people have been going on social media and seeing people reporting about drones and then looking deliberately, being vigilant and looking outside and saying, I wonder if I can see a drone. And so maybe that might be the reason why we've had an increased reports, or it just could be that people are not looking deliberately to find drones. They're just seeing them regardless. Yeah.
You have some police reports?
The police don't normally report to us. We're a civilian organization. I have not had pilots or police ever report to us about UFOs, mainly because the pilots may be under some restrictions about what they can discuss. But I did advertise on my website. If you're a pilot, please contact me if you've seen a UAP. Confidentiality assured, but I'm not getting reports. But I know for a fact that pilots are seeing UAPs, even though they're not reporting them. And our government is not supporting UAP research.
Okay. At the end, do you have some advice for the French ufologists who want to dig in? I mean, in the global topic.
Some advice to French ufologists,
Yeah,
in what regard?
you're a professional ufologist, and director of MUFON, and do you have advice for us? Like, yeah, watch much more on X or on Watch the Sky by Night or whatever. Whatever you think.
Yeah, it's such a broad field that I don't know, like there's so many different aspects that you can look at with this field. I am interested in crop circles. I'm interested in cattle mutilations, which have an association with UFOs as well. Um, and so because I'm interested in physical evidence, I've handled material that's been given to me for analysis that's allegedly from a UAP. Um, and I have we've tested it in a laboratory. So you can, if you want to, you can get very deeply into the subject by looking at it in a scientific perspective. We've had dust samples from a car, which we analysed because the car was pushed off the road by a UAP. And we gathered the dust samples and we found some anomalous metals in it, a combination of cadmium and copper. So basically we found some anomalous alloys, and also we've looked at metals that have allegedly come off a UAP and analysed it using electron microscopes, electron dispersive X-ray microanalysis. And so you can go down that path. You can, if you're a scientist and you want to research UFOs, there's many different things you can do. And I specialize in also crash sites. I went to the United States and I visited 5 crash sites. Roswell. I went to Roswell. I went to Kingman, the Kingman crash site. I went to the Socorro landing, and I also went to there's another one that I can't remember which one. Aztec, New Mexico. So I've been to all the crash sites, the major ones, and we've taken photographs, videos. We've done some analysis of the microtesla magnetic readings in the areas and looking at the vegetation, looking at the rocks, looking at other things to see whether we can determine if there's any evidence that anyone hasn't spotted before. So yeah, it's a very broad field, and if you want to do ufology, you have to pick which field you want to look at. And I am mainly interested in physical evidence. So because I want to prove that it is a phenomenon that is real.
You have excellent answers for us. I think I have
Thank you.
tons and tons of other questions for you, but time is running, I think so, for you too. And thank you, Roger, for being there with us. And we hope to have another time with you in the next video.
Yeah.
And, thanks again for.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Roger, donc je le redis en français, un immense merci pour le temps que vous nous avez consacré et pour avoir partagé votre expertise sur ce sujet fascinant. Votre éclairage sur la vague belge et sur l'histoire de la photo du Petit Rechain nous permet de mieux comprendre la complexité de ces phénomènes et de continuer à explorer cette incroyable énigme. Et ce n'est pas fini. Votre engagement dans le domaine de l'ufologie est une source d'inspiration pour nous tous, notamment français, et nous espérons avoir l'occasion de vous retrouver à nouveau pour discuter sur d'autres sujets. Nous souhaitons à vous et à tout le MUFON Australie beaucoup de succès dans vos recherches futures. Et à vous, chers spectateurs, merci d'avoir suivi cette interview. Si vous avez apprécié cette vidéo, n'hésitez pas à liker, partager et vous abonner à la chaîne. Et comme toujours, restez curieux et gardez l'esprit ouvert, mais n'oubliez pas de garder les pieds sur terre. À bientôt pour de nouvelles aventures ufologiques sur Raconte-moi un ovni. Ciao.
Ciao.